Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is Dimp Digital's flagship video game podcast where we take you through the ups and downs of the world of video games. We are here on your favourite podcast app and YouTube absolutely free. However, if you want to support this grassroots independent endeavour, head over to patreon.com/Dimp Digital and join the community. Hashtag hand in pocket. I'm joined by the nearly man, Resident Ref Logan. He's already sniggering to himself. Haven't even got started.
I don't know why that independent grassroots endeavour always gets me. And there's no rhyme or reason why you don't say it funny or anything particular. It's just the phraseology. Like
Does it even make sense? Have I blown it? Does it not make sense in English language?
Does.
Well,
no, it does. It makes. It's just it just makes me laugh because, like, obviously we are, but it just, I don't know. There's just something about that just makes me smirk, and I don't even know why. I can't tell you.
Well, that's my intention. So how many smirks we can get till the end of the year will be the new barometer of whether that's going to change or not. It's one of those things that it's nearly... I got lost there, actually. I actually had to quickly glance at the wording. It's rare that happens. I sort of, halfway through, I was like, hang on, what's happening here? And I had to quickly glance at the basics, but we got there in the end. Let's get into the show for Idle Game Chat. FGL update, coming thick and fast as you would expect. Very close. Squeaky bum time. We've said it many times before. I guess the main update from last week is that Adkins now has the clubhouse lead for the Grand Prix because 10 games have all come out and all scores. Sonic Frontiers was the last of his 10 that was required to get a score, and that has come out and earned itself a 73. Now, what's happened since the last episode and in the past few days is there's been a little bit of movement on some of the games as well, just slightly. Like Bayonetta has gone from what was an 89-88 down to an 86 in the last few weeks, and Logan's Football Manager 2023 is starting to climb. It was at an 83 last time, and it's now at an 84. So there is a little bit of movement, and it is actually closer than you think. As I said, Sonic Frontiers sitting on a 73 as we speak today. That gives him a total score of 805. Logan, who has one game remaining, is sitting on a 723, which leaves an 82-point difference. So that's come down significantly from the start of the week when Logan was being told basically here's what you need to get it through, and you've got Pentiment coming in the next few days. The scores will probably be for the next edition. If they're not, then something's gone wrong in the review process. They should have them out, and they should be out today in my view as we record this on the Friday, but they ain't. So someone's holding that back, which you can read into however you like, but I always like with God of War, it was just under a week before. It was like a good 5-6 days before. And I was like, that's perfect. And you kind of know what you're getting in for. I don't like this holding back nonsense. But essentially, the long and short of it is that leaves you with at the moment, scores are fluid at the moment because of low numbers in some of the reviews. 83 required for you to overhaul the 82-point deficit, which you do require because Adkins has the highest scored game of Elden Ring of 95, which just pips your God of War at 94. Confidence soaring now, or still frightened that it's all going to crumble in the last game?
Well, who knows? I mean,
it's got to the annoying stage now where I think there's more of a chance than you thought there would be. So now it'll feel like a blow if it doesn't meet the 83.
I was sitting here watching the trailer for Pentiment the other day, just having another look at it, just thinking, how plausible is it?
Torturing yourself.
I mean, I don't know. I have to be honest. It looks like it would be like a mid-70s ish sort of game to me. I'd be surprised if it gets into like people are scoring it like 8 out of 10 or whatever. Going to be a bit much. You just don't know.
No, you
But
don't.
I'd be really, really shocked if. I mean, there's always a chance, right? And I'm not ruling it out, but if it was in the 70s anywhere, I'd be like, well, that's possible, but or even achievable. But I feel like 83 that I need to get might just be too far out of the reach for Pentiment.
Well,
When Football Manager's getting 83, and that's what you need, you think is Pentiment gonna? I don't know. It just doesn't seem realistic. I think is where I'm at.
we'll find out hopefully next time that we get together, and when we should know for both. Because actually, I forgot to mention last week that Paper's final game was God of War Ragnarok, and his score for the championship. This is the main event, for goodness sakes, and it's sort of been a bit of a write-off for a few months because the way that Parky's just managed to get a stranglehold on it, and he's basically got out ahead and just not relented. And Paper sits on an 8-10. Parky's on an 8-3-2. Now the season doesn't officially end for another month and change, but for all intents and purposes, Parky will be crowned that unless there's a significant change, some sort of blow to one of Parky's games that causes him to lose the 20 odd points that's required, which is unlikely. So you're likely to see Parky wander in to the championship and become the king of the Fantasy Gaming League, and then next week we think we'll know who it's going to be challenging him next year. But as I mentioned, the scores are fluid. To see Bayonetta go down 2 score points in the last sort of 2 weeks is a bit of a shock, and Football Manager's still on low reviews, sort of 15 or so. That's still going to climb or go back down, and there's still people reviewing Sonic, so they're still at it. And God of War might get a few more, so I might come in and give it a 2 out of 10. Really crap on it, so it really isn't over yet. But
there's usually a few movement and stuff that is interesting come the final gradings, I think, in December. But yeah, it obviously hinges on Pentiment.
Yeah,
it's going to have to be a worldie, an unknown from somewhere that's coming and get something like an 80, mid-80s, really, to be sitting here celebrating with the title. So I'll continue. I suspect I'll be continuing with my Nearly Man title for another year at least. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see indeed. Well, let's get into some of the things that we've got on the docket this time round. Bit of news. European sales data's dropped. It's a bit earlier in the month. Usually games industry.biz, it's normally around the 15th or the 20th we get it, but old Chrissy Dring over there has dropped the sales data. So let's take a look at the top 10 when I get my bloody tabs open. So, unsurprisingly, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 leads the charge. FIFA 23 is second. Grand Theft Auto hanging on in third. Gotham Knights coming in at fourth. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope's fifth. Red Dead Redemption 2 at 6. Splatoon 3 at 7. NBA 2K23 at 8. Victoria 3 coming in at number 9 from Paradox. And then Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Edition, what's that, 6 years after release, sitting there in 10th. Bearing in mind, as I keep saying, we only get physical sales from Nintendo, so again, probably higher in all realities. What that means in terms of the power rankings is not really a great deal, to be honest. We've still got Grand Theft Auto on top with 66 points. FIFA 22 will not be on there anymore, so that's stuck on 57. Elden Ring scrambling at 36, trying to hold on. Lego Star Wars has stalled a little bit in the last couple of months. It's sitting on a 35. Got F1 2022 clinging on. Nintendo Switch Sports, Horizon Forbidden West, Red Dead Redemption, Gran Turismo 7, and now FIFA 23 enters the top 10 of the power rankings there. I mean, really no surprises to see Call of Duty top that, is there? We spoke even last week that Activision were bragging about new milestones being hit, and I was reading something today, there's another milestone it's about to knock down in the next couple of days, so an unmitigated success for Activision, despite your taking a big old crap on it last time round.
Yeah. And by the way, very little's changed.
Give them some time. They've got about 3 months, haven't they, by the laws of how games are released these days? 3 months to fix it.
It's bizarre, it really is.
Here we go. Modern Warfare 2 is already close to topping Vanguard's lifetime sales in Europe. I mean, that's not hard, is
doesn't.
it? That was a disaster, and they got.
Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't consign Sledgehammer to the fucking bins, I don't know what will. Poor buggers. I mean, they've had a couple of goes at it, but they just can't seem to produce a good Call of Duty. So get out.
Get out of it, indeed. I did you want to mention that I looked at the whole charts. They do top 20. We only look at the top 10 because you've got to have some sort of elitism here. And I mentioned, would have been last month now, about The Last of Us Part 1. See how that did, because I think it went in at 5 for September. October's list has rolled around. It ain't even in the top 20. So it's bombed out after 1 month, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, are you surprised at that?
No,
I
not.
don't think I am.
I'm not at all. Well, I'm somewhat surprised because you kind of think, well, the people in the boardroom know what they're doing. They must think this is going to do well. But for all the noise that was occurring, that suggests to me that's not got much staying power. And the reason why I say The Last of Us Part 1 hasn't got much staying power is because the likes of Gran Turismo 7 still got the 20th position this month. So that's still ticking over. Horizon Forbidden West also. Now, they are available on PS4 and PS5, so it does have an install base advantage there. We must point that out. However, I don't know. That feels like this is not going to hit... Well, we don't know what their sales targets are. Let's not talk rubbish, but to me, you'd have been looking to see that in the top 20 for at least another month to sort of sign it off, but doesn't look like it's going to do overly well. But it can't be surprising, considering all of the noise that come out before it, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. I suspected all the people that really would have wanted that have gone and got it. And then there's this other group of people that are like, well, I've already played it.
Yeah.
God knows how many times. I don't really need this. I'll wait until it's on sale, perhaps. And I think that's the bucket that they're going to find themselves in. So it's hardly surprising that core section have gone out, bought it, and then...
That's it. It's run out of steam
that's
immediately.
It. Yeah.
There's no reason to buy it 2 weeks after for 70 quid. You might as well wait for a sale. If that... Cause one of the reasons I haven't bought it, I thought, well, it's just not worth 70 quid. So I ain't going to go and get it in the weeks after it's released and go, cool, I just couldn't hold on for God of War. I just had to go and buy it the last... No. So yeah, maybe when it goes on sale, it'll appear back. Or if they bundle it with like a PS5 physical, sometimes they do like a bundle with the editions and whatnot. Which is why I think Horizon Forbidden West is hanging around, because there's been a lot of those bundles in the last 6 months, and they they still count as sales, so they've been bundling that to it. Let's move on to some impressions. It's going to be quite an impression-heavy edition, because there's been a couple of releases. Let's just start with the big one that we saw the reviews of a 94 sticking in the last few weeks or whatnot. God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
First of all, I have to say I feel sorry for people who've had to go out and buy Sonic this week. For whatever reason, they've had to go and get Sonic because they haven't got a PS5 or a PS4, or they're only on PC, or whatever it is. I've seen people taking pictures of that in their hand. I'm like, oh God. And do you know what? And this is going to sound really bad. They've all got Xbox logos on the boxes. So, they've had to go out and buy that crap. And unfortunately, they're trying to pretend like it's a big deal. I'm being facetious. But speaking of some disasters, Adkins, the poor boy, had a disaster. Didn't get his on release day. Shop2.net getting called out because it didn't arrive. It arrived on the Thursday instead of the Wednesday. Not a major disaster, but it is. It actually, if you're in Adkins' position, it actually is a disaster. It's like the worst evening of your life because you're like, well, I've moved heaven and earth to play this tonight, and I'm sitting here with cock in hand. So, Shop 2 trying to get ahead of the game and not get stung by these Royal Mail strikes. When I think it was Every, or I can't remember what they're called now. Took over Yoda or whatever. They've enlisted them to do their deliveries, and it came Thursday rather than Wednesday. So Adkins was not happy. Whilst literally everyone in the group had it on Wednesday. I was like going, "Oh, look at this!" And then you didn't even bloody play it for a few days.
No, I got it installed, and I was like, "There you go." I was like, well, the thing is, it's like I was working all day anyway, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to sit here this evening and do it." I kind of always earmarked like another day for it anyway, so it's fine. Like I'm not. I just the main reason I got it on pre-order anyway was because it was cheaper. Obviously, you sent me a deal through Currys, so I was like, well, I might as well do that. But it was never.
Did it come via Royal Mail from Currys?
No, DPD.
Well, they're proper boys and girls over there. They know how to get things done on time usually.
Yeah, they DPD'd it straight to the old door. So, no issues there. Got time frames, the lot. Yeah. So, they done a good job. But, it was never a case of I need it as soon as it comes through, sort of bung it in, really. It was always a case of get it, it's there, ready over the next couple of days to stick it on.
Yeah, well, I digitally got it, so it was preloaded probably a week before. I did toy with should I stay up till midnight and play it? I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'll be fucking knackered by the time it gets to 12, and then I'll play it for an hour and be like, oh.
Yeah, and then because you're so tired, you won't be fully invested in.
I might as well get up at the crack of dawn the next day and then hammer it out, which, because of that bloody dog, you have to get up anyway. So if you're up and around and he's gone back to sleep, it's time to crack onto that. But I've played about 12 hours or so of it.
Yeah.
So a decent investment of time. You've done a handful now? Maybe 5 tops? If I'm guessing, I don't know.
4 hours, 20 minutes of gameplay.
4 hours, 20 minutes of gameplay. So obviously you've not gone very far. I'm not, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think I'm very far necessarily. You know, it seems like it's quite a meaty game. But I wanted to start with you because these are super early impressions. What's the barometer check on this? How are you feeling? Having just recently finished the original, 4 or 5 weeks ago, if that.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a little bit of meddling, like in terms of like how you use your armor and all this kind of stuff. So it's not a direct, just kind of like a reskin or a rehash, and they've pulled everything in, which I don't know whether I'm bothered. I'm not particularly I wouldn't say I'm bothered about that or not. It's kind of like, okay, it's fine. So I guess I noticed that, but really, I guess the overriding feeling is it feels very much like I've kind of just carried on where I've left off.
Literally, almost.
Yeah, with just a couple of weeks really in between. I think that was all it was, maybe a month at most. But there's nothing, and I don't know if it's me. I presume the frame rate's higher. I don't know what it's running at. Is it running at 60?
So it depends what you've set it on. So you can run it at 60 performance, and then if you've got a 120 hertz with, I think it needs to have HDMI 2.1, which not all the monitors do. You can then basically unlock the 60 frames per second mode, and it'll be somewhere between 100 and 70 odd, and it should enable VRR, so those frame rate drops are not noticeable. So that's what I've got it on. I've got it like performance and then performance plus or something, so all the frames. But then the original now on PS5 runs at 60. So that's not even like a massive upgrade if you've played that recently.
That's what I was trying to get at, because obviously I played that. Like in terms of like performance and graphics, I don't know. I guess maybe you could argue it does look a bit better, but it's hard like to really explain what that might be.
Yeah.
I think arguably it just feels very much like the original God of War that I just played, like technically and graphically, which isn't a bad thing because, as I said, thoroughly enjoyed that.
Wow.
And that's okay. But yeah, as I said to you last time, when I picked up original God of War, I kind of picked it up and then went, put it down for ages, didn't I? But I picked it up and struggled to put it down. And I think it shows you that despite putting all that time in relatively recently, that I'm not fatigued by it. I don't feel fatigued, and I just kind of want to continue playing it. But it definitely feels like, especially in some of they've amped up the level, so it's gone to like level 11 in terms of gore and like how like the actual battle, the battles have gone up a level. I think that's the most noticeable thing for me, is like the things that you can do to make like those engagements more interesting. And you obviously, you get the blades pretty much straight off the bat, which helps because they're by far, I think, the most interesting thing to use over the Leviathan act. And I was pleased they did that, because I was thinking, bloody hell, if I have to,
Yeah,
if he takes 3/4 of the game to pull those
lays out.
Blades of Chaos, I'm going to be livid. So you kind of get that whole armory at the beginning, and obviously you start unlocking different power ups and things and elements. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I haven't really got any noticeable. Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of criticisms at the moment, I have had an issue where I had to reload a checkpoint.
User error,
which
I presume.
No. So I noticed it was just going a bit weird. So I was trying to tell Atreus to shoot his arrow at something, and he just wasn't coming to where I was, and he was trying to shoot it halfway across the level.
Right,
and I was like, what are you doing? And he just seemed to
He's
have
trying
got
to do a
stuck.
world class. I don't need to do a world class from there. I need you to just get it rather than trying to do it silly.
I was just thinking, I just need you to come here. So I had to keep running around the map to try and get him to follow me, to then come to this area to shoot the arrow. And eventually I got him to do that. And then I went inside a building to speak to someone that I need to speak to, and he just kept snapping to like where he should be standing for the interaction, but it wasn't prompting the interaction. And I went in and out of the building a couple of times, like thinking, oh, maybe I'll try and like reset it. But it got stuck in this like weird loop where Atreus was not really like doing what he should be doing. So I had to reload the checkpoint, went straight back to the building. It worked fine. I was like, that's a bit odd.
That is strange. Yeah, because Atreus is less attached to you in this game, and he wasn't overly attached to you in the first one, but he can like climb things on his own now, so he's not on your back. He can kind of go up, so he feels like he's further away a lot of the time. He's a little bit older and he's more more capable, I guess. So it opens the game up to some of those weirder moments. In the first one, I don't think once in 2 playthroughs I noticed him teleporting or being where he shouldn't be, because he was always kind of quite close, and then they would put the camera in such a position that it would seem like he's just jumped on the screen, when probably he was halfway across the map, because I ain't turned round, he's just jumped on it. Whereas in this one, I've definitely noticed, like, even when I've gone to go to the armor shop, like if he's standing 10 yards up the road, he's like teleported in to do like the interaction. So also I had a strange it's happened twice now. Some sounds randomly cut out. Like, I can hear Kratos fucking breathing. He's got a headset on and he's going, that's getting on my nerves. Him fucking puffing away.
When he's like sprinting.
Oh no, when he's wandering around sometimes, I could hear him just go,
old fuck.
Yeah. People are probably
Losing his head.
Probably people saying that about his podcast, they can always hear me breathing, but it's harder than it sounds. But so I could hear that, but then I couldn't hear things like if I'd change weapons, like, hear the that was all gone. I was like, what's happened here? Just reloaded it and it's fine. Happened again late, and I think it's where I am getting a new codex entry, and Ronnie's like, don't miss it, and immediately I'm pressing it, and sometimes it's crapping out the sound. So it's happened twice in 12 hours, so it's not by no means a regular occurrence, but worth calling those out. I've had no crashes or anything like that. What I would say, had this been recorded a day ago, I would have been sitting there going, I don't understand where these 94s are coming from in some respects. But it is a bit of a slow burn. And I feel like it's just starting to kick into gear now. I'm like, okay, maybe I was a bit... Maybe I wasn't... Well, I was a good 10 hours in by that point. Maybe 8 hours. And I was thinking, I'm enjoying it, don't get me wrong. This is still... moment to moment really good, but I'm like, where are they getting these 94s from? Like, it has to do something absurd. I don't think it's necessarily going to do that, but I think narrative wise it's starting to kick into gear a bit, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting more into this, more into the characters, etc. So I would say it's a bit of a slow start generally, in some respects, that people might be playing it going, what are we doing here then? What are we playing at?
I must admit, I found the original a bit slow, like to get into, and before that story started actually kicking in, and it is a little bit like that on this one. I mean, I think it actually has quite like the initial half hour, really does. I thought was good, and then you're right, it does in terms of the story, sort of like slow it, and I'm sort of a bit. I do immediately at the moment feel less invested
Yeah.
I think that's difficult, and I'm not. This is a really minor criticism, and it's not. I'm not. Again, to your point, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely kind of less emotionally invested in the story at the moment because the whole story revolved around obviously the original one. You getting to the top of the highest peak to like divvy out your mum's ashes and your wife's ashes. Like that's an emotional story and journey and endeavor. Whereas at the minute, the story isn't about that. Like, and it's kind of a bit. And I think to that end, it's a little bit slower because you're like, right, I'm not as emotionally involved. But yeah, to your point, I'm kind of waiting for. I'm expecting there'll be some like different characters and things because the ones it pretty much introduces to you straight off the bat are the ones you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I think it's definitely it's a good start, but not. The first 4.5 hours haven't been like overly spectacular as yet. It's kind of how I'd put it.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree, and I think I've just got over a bit of a hump. I think where I'm like, okay, now things are now the gears in my head are turned of like, what is going to happen? Where's this going? I didn't really have that for the first 8 hours, I'd say. And maybe even a bit longer. So I would say it's a bit of a slow burn to kick things off. The writing is still excellent, like the character interactions. I don't remember the first one being as funny as this, but I really am finding myself chuckling more than usual. It's normally just when you're in and around doing things in the world, whether it's like busy work, getting loot or whatever. It's just Comet, it's Mimir and Atreus interacting, or it's Kratos responding to something like that's all still very, very good. The traversal mechanics have been improved a lot by having those bloody blades because you can immediately just sort of grapple hook your way in a sense up to a higher level, and they will put enemies on higher platforms now that will be abhorrent. So you want to be. It feels like you're a bit more mobile in that sense, and you're really not because you can still sprint like you could in the first one, but just having that ability to snap up to another level and jump back down and then parlay that with a slam attack is really cool. So there's definitely tweaks that they've made to improve that. The big plus for me, though, Logan, is that there's a fucking postie.
I did notice this.
There's a fucking postie. If you leave some resources or loot in a battle, don't pick it up. It'll be back at that armor shop. There's a little postie there. I think it's one of the dwarves. I can't remember what they contextualise it now, but essentially you go to a chest and it picks up all the toot you've missed. And I was like, oh my god, the postie has returned from Destiny.
It's literally the best game feature because there's no reason. Like it's always bothered me because you have a fear when you're doing things, just having to check every like last inch of a map before you leave it because of the fear that you'll leave behind a key bit of loot. It's like, why punish me like that? Like, let me be a little bit less worried about it and know that if I do miss something, it'll be there waiting for me. And I thought that was a nice little addition when old Brock says that. I thought it was good.
Yeah. So that's always good. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm going to be playing it. It's going to take a little while. I'm not like not overdo it, or trying not to overdo it as best I can. And looking forward to cracking on. I would say that if you didn't like the original, or thought the original was overrated in some way, I don't think this is going to change your mind at this stage. I really don't. Because I just don't. It's not that big a difference, in all honesty. Which some people will criticise it for. No, that's not. But they will be. Yeah. I'm still a bit surprised by these 94s because my whole theory was that it'll be. If you enjoyed the first one, you'll enjoy this one, but it's more the same. 88. That was what I was thinking when you chuck 94s out there. I'm thinking, well, what's happening here? But maybe things will start to turn as we get into the second third of the game or into the back half of it, because it does lull and then it will kick into gear for a while and you're like, cool, that was a fucking absolute ride for the last 30 minutes, and you kind of forget about the lulls. I am really enjoying the little small puzzle elements which they had in the original, but trying to find a way to get to a chest that's not essential, but there might be some interactions with some traversaling or, throwing the axe at something and whatnot. Like, they're very clever with that, and they continue to do that in Ragnarok. So, looking forward to getting back into it. I don't think we're going to talk about this again until done. So, that'll be that. And want to try and get as many people on it as possible potentially, but we'll see how things pan out. So it might be a little while before the full report's handed in by the guys here at Dimp, but so far enjoying it. If not, just not quite blown away just yet, and still plenty of the game to go for that to be the case. Changing gears.
Yeah.
Ever so slightly, some would say. Others would go, well, that's a completely different genre, you mugs. Football Manager 2023, released to the public, sitting there on that Game Pass. Logan, I don't want to say he was addicted to this game, but there's a level of illness potentially going on. And it's every year. It's thousands of hours totted up over multiple years and sometimes in single entries. You've made the switch recently to this Xbox or console edition of it, which you'd mentioned on the last edition, and I'm assuming that's where you've gone this time, booted up that on Game Pass. So first of all, I want to know how you're playing this. Is it just on the Xbox, or have you streamed it to an iPad? Because I know that was an option that you was toying with. What's going on in terms of Footy Manager 2023 console edition?
Yeah, I'm just playing it on my console. So I've plugged in the old the mouse into the Xbox, and I just play it pretty much like a PC, to be honest. It runs very nicely like that. The mouse is smooth. It feels quite natural. So did
you bother trying with a controller at all?
It's honestly, it's not even worth it. I don't know how anyone could. I mean, that being said, and obviously we can get into a little bit of it, but they've made a few changes this year that make it a little bit more manageable on the console edition if you're not using and haven't got a mouse, which I think is a good step forward. But definitely still a mouse for me.
A mouse jobby. So how many hours do you reckon you've put into it? Same as God of War, or less, or a bit more?
Probably less. I mean, it's probably about it's probably about 2 to 3 hours tops.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously we're not going to render a verdict here and now, but what are the initial impressions, having played this game for, as I said, probably, although it's even a decade, it might be more now, year on year.
Yeah, well, I've been playing. The earliest one, Football Manager, I can remember, is 2004. It was a Football Manager 2004. Have
you missed one since?
I don't know. I definitely haven't missed one since 2012.
Right.
I've definitely played every Football Manager since 2012.
At least 10 years streak then going on here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it's really difficult with this game because everyone goes anything different. It's always been the same. It's been the same for years.
Kratos just got crapped on for being too similar, and we're letting spreadsheet sims get away with it.
Well, the problem is they've got 98% of it down to a T, right? So they're not going to fundamentally change that much of the game year on year. So it just becomes sort of quality of life in gameplay changes and things. There's a slight tweaks as to what people like and what they don't like, I think. And that seems to me to be where they've gone with this. So, it's going to look pretty familiar if you played last year's, the year before's, or the year before that. There's no huge change there. But as I say, from the one that I've played on console, the definite change is that last year's very much still felt like a PC game on console. And obviously there's some interactions with the controller that perhaps don't work too well. But things like how you provide team talks have changed. When you click on a player, it gives you this wheel.
If you have a voice option, you actually say it. You go, "Oi, you bastards," and it translates that and puts it into the game. What was it?
Unfortunately, not there.
Was it FIFA that used to use the Kinect? And if it caught you swearing, you get a touchline ban or something.
Yeah. To be fair, I think that's quite a good little idea.
It's funny, but it's quite scary that the bastard's listening to you all the time. Because I bet a few people didn't even realise it was on all the time.
It's listening
and it's watching.
Listening and watching at all times. Big brother. But they've just made some slight changes. At least I don't know whether it's on the full PC version, but definitely on the console version, they've made some changes, just quality of life stuff, just to make things a little bit simpler and easier. I think if you're using a controller, which I appreciated, and it looks like they've done a little bit more, as they always tend to, with the match engine. a little bit more different when you're playing out from the back, and some of the passes and some of the interactions in the penalty box and stuff are a bit more refined. But yeah, it's pretty much the same. It's like if you like Football Manager, you're going to like this one. As I say, only a few hours into it. Still, always just do. I mean, this save will inevitably get binned. Like the first save never gets continued because I'm just trying to figure out the mechanics and what it's all about. But yeah, it's very similar, I guess, is my overriding thought, with a few quality of life changes.
But that's surely the same story every year, isn't it? Like, do they ever really overhaul it to such an extent where you go, "Oh, that feels a lot different"? Does this feel less iterative than last? What I'm trying to get, is this a normal cycle essentially, or is it less than perhaps years gone by?
Well, it feels like they've done more this year compared to what I saw last year, just purely because of some of the changes they've made. But this is the problem. I don't know whether they've just done them for the console version or not. I suspect they have, but because they've done those things, it makes it feel like they've done more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I have to admit, like the actual engine in the game looks, or at least to me, it looks better than it did last year.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's not saying much because the graphics are not good, but they feel like they've upped those a little bit at least. So yeah, it's just as usual. It's just iterative changes every year, which I'm fine with. I think predominantly the main reason everyone buys it is for those iterative changes and for the squad updates.
Yeah.
Really, when you boil it down, I mean, I say buys it, plays it on Game Pass now. So yeah, it's who knows. I don't know whether I'm going to continue to play Football Manager as much as I have done in the past. I think the only reason that I played it much more last year is because me and Pee-wee did the co-op season.
Well, I was going to ask about that. I was going to say, what's the plan this year? Is Pee-wee burnt from, I assume, getting pummeled by you, or was it just a bit of a hassle?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't. I mean, it was the first time that he'd really played Football Manager, at least for many years, at any length. So he's kind of getting used to the game and understanding how it works and stuff. But he got there in the end. I mean, he had some unfortunate experiences and things on it. And I think one of the things with me is, well, I understand how Football Manager works. So for no apparent reason, you'll just fall off a cliff edge. Right?
Yeah.
And you just stop winning and stuff. And then I'll just go, right, when that happens, I just have to start tweaking. It's just for some reason, like, you get figured out by the game. So it like makes you tinker. So I just start tinkering with a few bits. But Pee-wee was like, I was winning like this last season.
Well, yeah.
Why can't I this season?
Well, ask him why that's not happening this season for Paul. They're winning like that last season. What's happened this season?
It is a bit like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit like Klopp syndrome. It gives you that. And you go, well, what's changed?
Yeah.
There's just little things like that, and he did get the ump with it in the end a little bit, and it went off the boil. But he hasn't got Game Pass anymore.
Interesting.
So that's the blow for him, because I actually messaged him saying, "Oh, Football Manager's out. Are you going to get it?"
I ain't buying that toss.
And he said, "How much?" I was like, "Just get this on Game Pass." He was like, "I ain't got that." I was like, "Well, it's £32. Otherwise, that's obviously not getting bought." So at the moment, it seems unlikely. But I did enjoy it. I must admit, I liked the difference. I liked doing it as a co-op season. Like it adds a different dynamic to the game. Where, and we didn't. I always do a season with Tottenham, obviously, who are still a reasonably good side, got a reasonable pot of money.
Not realistic.
Last season, I did it with Pee-wee. I did it with Nottingham Forest, and he was Blackburn. So it's like you've got to get out of the Championship into the Premier League, establish yourself. So it's like you're playing the long game, and it was just an interesting and it's just a more interesting way of playing it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't particularly see myself sitting there on the Xbox doing it for 1,000 hours. I don't. I just think there's. I think the difference is there's other things nowadays that I'd rather play, as opposed to just sitting there And it's different when you're a laptop because I can go if I go somewhere or whatever. It's like
there,
I'll
isn't
take
it?
that and I can play it a bit, but I'm kind of confined to just playing it
Hey,
on my Xbox.
xCloud, chuck it on this thing. These old
Nah.
phones.
I mean, if it actually recognised that I had a touch screen in my hand and I could play it like that, but it doesn't really recognise like the difference when you're trying to. It's like, well, I'm used to doing this with a mouse. How does it work with a touch screen? It doesn't quite translate that too well.
No.
Um,
Because some
but
games do
yeah.
have touch recognition, but I don't know how well it works. I've never come across a game that's
I mean, yeah. When I tried it last year, it wasn't great. I
wasn't
mean, I could
optimal.
try again this year. It's not the right way to play it, and I'm adamant anyway that playing anything on mobile generally is the worst place to play any game and get any experience.
But
So,
Football Manager is surely the exception to the rule, though. If anything's going to work,
Mm.
it's a slow-paced strategy game where it's meddling around in menus, isn't it? Really.
well, I've actually got the Football Manager mobile on my iPad,
Well,
so
that does the
I
trick.
can play. Yeah, that does the trick really, and that's just a real. It gives you what you need or what you'd expect from something on a touch screen. It's not too complicated and it's not too involved. So I've played that for a bit on there. But yeah, I don't know whether I'm just sort of a bit done. And it's nothing against Football Manager, it's still very good. But I'll still play it, but I won't play it for the excessive amount of hours that I used to.
No, and they were excessive hours. That's it. Football Manager, excellent. Impressions done. Maybe we'll revisit it if more is done. If not, that's what it'll be. I'm fascinated by this Pee-wee cancelling Game Pass, though. That's really just... Well, I just don't understand what he's doing that for.
Well, it's clever, actually,
Go on.
because what does he play? When you boil it down to
Rocket
it,
League, Call of Duty, Warzone.
correct. Do you need Game Pass for either of them?
No.
Do you even need Xbox Live?
No, not for the free-to-play versions
So
of that.
there you go, and I think that's the overriding answer. And he I mean, we played two of us when that was on there, but it obviously expired.
You're telling me Pete doesn't want to play a Plague Tale Requiem, which is a day one Game Pass edition. He doesn't want to play Pentiment or Somerville. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I've actually pre-downloaded Pentiment as well. Ironically, I'm going to
Trying to boost the numbers, trying to just do trying to put some good energy out there so it gets a few more.
Creating a fake company. Well, you'll see Dimp Digital reviews come through on there. It'll get a 10 out of 10. But yeah, it's just not his bag. So
No.
you can understand why he's done it. I think clearly the change, and this is, I guess, another point that's good for the community is not having to have Xbox Live and Game Pass and all this stuff. If all you want to do is play free to play online stuff, it's a good thing. But
If he wants to play Modern Warfare 2, though, he needs Live, doesn't he? Because that's not.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure he has got
He's still
live.
got Live, yeah.
Yeah, I think he just bought a year's subscription for it. But yeah, for a while he didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's interesting. I just assumed he wouldn't be proactive like that. He'd just leave it to run and think, well, at some point I'll benefit from this. But clearly he wasn't impressed with the service and then said, I don't need all that toss. I just need the Xbox Live and I'll be happy on Rocket League for mostly. Thank you.
Basically, I think that's what he did. He was just like, well, why do I need it?
Goes back into what you'd said, and I think I've also said previously, is that if there was some sort of Game Pass perk in Rocket League for the season pass or whatever, then it might make sense to just have that rather than paying separately for that. That
It feels like a missed trick from Phil, I think, to not give. Why would you not give people special rewards for having Game Pass and Game Pass only or Game Pass games?
Yeah.
Like you surely, or even in any game that Microsoft has got the capability to say, like it's like, well, if you get Game Pass and you get an extra decal or don't know, anything really.
Interesting. Well, Jim's just sent me an email asking me if I want to pre-order the DualSense Edge for £210. No, thank you.
You should order it to review it.
I don't do hardware reviews. 209. It ain't. We've been through it. It ain't of use to me, is it? I ain't going to play. It ain't going to make God of War any better for me. So it's of no interest. But
Sorry, just going back. I don't think when I played the original God of War that there was haptic interaction.
So the
And you won't. I don't know if you'll know that, but there definitely is some element of haptic, obviously, in this one. So that is something I did want to call out that I forgot to say.
Yeah, I think because it was a PS4 game and it was just running through back compat, I don't think they patched in robust haptics or triggers
No.
in there. It may have been like at a base level or like maybe it's like a default mapping that will just do some stuff. But yeah, there's definitely there's tension and certain interactions with the triggers that will you pull a little bit, they'll just snap down. Yeah, they've done a little bit there, which is all, as I say, I always just like the feeling of that PlayStation controller when it's firing on all cylinders, like when it's all kicking off, and then I go and play something else without that, and it just feels a bit flat. But it's
sorry, I messed it up, haven't I?
Yeah.
I've taken that out of the review and pulled it back in. But it's something I did want to say.
Then he's called it a review, and it's only 4 hours. He's trying to.
Well, initial impression.
Exactly.
Reviewing my initial impression. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Might not make sense. Might not make sense like grassroots endeavours, but we'll get there eventually. Anyway, that'll be it for this part of the podcast. We're going to transition into some more game impressions. You know what? I'd love it if the podcast was only talking about games, but it's impossible to manufacture that.
What do you mean? What, as in only having reviews?
Only having impressions. Yeah, that was what I would love, but I just don't think it's sustainable on the weeks where people
news.
Yeah, very
rumors,
little. Yeah, none of that.
Innuendo.
None of the bollocks, as we call it. All cut. Just talk about the games. But this was a game heavy one, so I just wanted to call that out and say I'm happy with that. So what they've got next, I mentioned last week I ballsed up the scheduling, and I've managed to get it in line now. So we've got Man of Medan, Little Hope, and the main event, House of Ashes, impressions coming from myself and Adcock. So that's the supermassive stuff done in preparation for The Devil in Me, which is coming very, very shortly. So all the previous games are locked and loaded with impressions, and then as and when we get round to The Devil in Me, then they will also drop sometime in the future. So that's what we're going to be transitioning into. Nothing more to say here other than we'll see you on the other side. Here we are then, back with some game impressions to close out this edition of Idle Game Chat. Joined by Pac-Man himself. What are you, a 2-time quiz winner now?
I think so, yeah.
A couple of times, so get that in there, because got people like Logan turning up semi-regularly with no accolades to the name, so got to make sure that those that have won something are in there. Just to let people know, we recorded about 6 minutes of this, and I realised my setup was wrong, and the audio from Adcock wasn't being recorded. So, actually, about the first time that's happened for a long time, if ever. I generally am pretty good at checking it, but that's what happens. So we've got 3 games on the docket. We're not going to spend loads of time on each of them because they've been covered before. So Man of Medan, Little Hope, House of Ashes, the Dark Pictures anthology from Supermassive Games. I'm going to quickly kick off with Man of Medan. I know I've covered this on previous episodes. I'm not going to repeat myself. And the reason why I'm doing it again is because they released a PS5 version, a free upgrade, which gave 60 frames per second. It added a new ending chapter even, which I didn't actually get to experience. And a few other bits like adding... I guess it took... This is for Little Hope as well, I should say. It's a PS5 version. They took some of the things they'd done in House of Ashes, like adding difficulty levels for you to choose, implemented it into these PS5 versions, given the frame rate a boost, sped up the walk-in, which looked a bit strange, particularly in Little Hope. But the fundamentals are still the same. Like, it's the same game you've played before, just looks a bit smoother, I guess, and has, in Man of Medan's case, a different chapter or a different outcome for you to explore. I'm still in the bronze category for Man of Medan, so even with these little upgrades for the PS5 version, so that's staying there, staying in the gallery. So it's actually gone in twice this year, which is an achievement for some games. I guess the cool thing to call out is that even though this was my 5th playthrough, I still found a new ending sequence by accident. So that's pretty impressive, given that I've probably got to the end of this game about 7 times doing trophies and whatnot, just messing around. But I was quite impressed with that even years later, I'm still stumbling across new bits and pieces for these games. But a nice solid bronze there for Man of Medan. Little Hope. So we played for this together, and same with House of Ashes. We did a shared story, is what they're called, where we kind of get to play not half each. I'd say we get about 3/4 of the game, as a solo run. Like if you go through solo, you'll sometimes play a scene A, scene B, whereas when we do a shared story, I'm playing scene A, you're playing scene B, so you miss scene A and I miss scene B. So there is a little bit of a cutting of corners there. But we played through Little Hope's PS5 version on a shared story. I guess this is your first game, Supermassive game, since The Quarry, which we'd spoken about earlier on or a little while ago. How did you find jumping back into Little Hope, which, for all intents and purposes, the shorter games, these Dark Pictures anthology, and come at a bit more of a budget price? I mean, you got it at an insane price of like 10 quid or 9 quid, but they don't retail, at least these ones didn't, for more than 25 quid compared to sort of The Quarry's 65. So there's a big old gap there. What did you think of the Little Hope, though?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it actually. Probably maybe even more so than I thought I would. But that might have come down to low expectations, because I know this game didn't review great. The fact that I paid under a tenner for it. But I mean, the good things, nice free PS5 upgrade that I managed to install finally, which was good.
You basically just install the game again, just with the PS5 tag on it, don't you?
What did I do? I downloaded the PS4 version, then I somehow downloaded the trial, and then you can just go onto the game, and there's literally a button saying download PS5 upgrade. Very simple when you look. So that was nice. I think the other thing I thought was quite positive was after The Quarry, which I did quite enjoy, Quarry, but that game, having been made in mind for Stadia originally, seemed to dumb down on the gameplay mechanics a bit. It was quite easy, so you didn't really ever feel too stressed. It was just like a fun, playable, like movie, I guess. Rather, these games are kind of stripped back gameplay wise anyway. Yeah. Anyway, going into Little Hope with the quick time events, been quite difficult actually, and even more so, I found out later, depending on decisions made, they will get harder still. I found it quite stressful, but enjoyable. There are some downsides to it. I mean, if I'd paid £25 for this, would I have been happy? Probably not. Right. Characters are a little on the bland side. Very little story setup.
This one in particular, because Man of Medan has it, and we'll get on to House of Ashes, but both like give you a scene, or at least of who the characters are and what they're about, whereas this just chucks you in, bus crash, and you kind of you're confused throughout the game. I think that's intentional, given like the overall kind of narrative arc that takes place. I think it intentionally puts you in a confusing state, but I like to know who these people are, just so, because funny enough, we were talking about this. I think you asked me, like, how do you play these games? Do you play them as like a baddie or like a good guy, or how do you? And I said at the time, I try and do the morally right thing, like, so every conversation's positive, and I found that playing it that way is a little bit boring, and I'm going to revert back to what I was doing previously, which is to like role play, as in try and get a gauge of who these characters are and play them that route. If it means they're a dickhead, they'll be a dickhead. And it might cost me, but I want to get to the fate. I'm in the stage now where it doesn't matter actually how many people die, as long as what happens in the story is actually quite entertaining. So if a few people die, it's actually quite good. Whereas I know I think you might treat it like, I've lost a life almost.
Yeah.
It's never nice, I guess, to see him die, but I find it quite entertaining. You're like, that's quite cool. And how the story's now coming together, that's quite cool. But
yeah, I guess maybe with The Quarry, it was a bit easier to kind of pick and choose who you wanted to live and die. Whereas this one, I think I got frustrated because I didn't want, was like messing up quick time events and whatnot. But it was fun to play through. The other thing I'd say a bit of a negative was just the town of Little Hope, where you kind of it had the opportunity to maybe be that like extra character in itself, whereas I feel like it was more like a subpar version of what I remember Silent Hill to be like foggy town, random buildings. Just a bit like the characters, a bit lacking that substance. I will say though, the antagonists, while they're around, they're kind of scary. Like for this, I quite likes them. So mixed bag, if I'm honest. There's definitely things I liked about it, and I probably enjoyed it more than I expected to. But maybe they don't learn a great deal of lessons from Man and Medan, because I think
it felt I get that feeling as well, that similar sort of errors were made. It's much more playable than Man and Medan. Now, I don't know if you can remember, but I've got a direct reference, and my goodness, like Little Hope. The reason why I thought Little Hope was so good when I spoke about it a little while back is because I just played Man and Medan. I was like, I can't believe how much better this just plays. Like most of the game has like a full third-person camera that you can swing around. It does annoyingly just cut to, the static camera shots and the fixed camera angles in weird places just to... Normally it's for a jump scare. That's another thing that kind of wound me up. It's very jump scare heavy, or at least it's trying to do that rather than it being sort of uneasy, I guess. You're just kind of like loud noises and someone potentially grabbing you and you're like, oh, okay. It's just, that's what's going on. But this is a much more playable game compared to Man and Medan. And
agreed. Well, from what I remember.
Yeah. So where would you... I mean, does it go in the gallery at all for you? I was assuming there that it's going to... Because I've already opened the doors. There's people sort of wandering in and out now. Does it make a run and make itself into your little personal exhibition?
It definitely does. It'd be more interesting if I could erase having played like The Quarry and House of Ashes so closely to it. It might even have been bumped up a little bit more because it was enjoyable. But I think it's a bronze, which is fair enough. So it certainly gets in there. And if you can pick it up now with the same as I did, either digital, it's probably on sale now at Halloween.
Yeah, it's on the at least as we record this, and it probably will be, they stay on for about a year, but it's on the PS Plus extra tier as well, so the middle tier of that. So if people are into that, it's there as well. I'm also going to give it a bronze as well, which it had a silver earlier in the year, but it's been dropped down a little bit on a second replay, even with all the bells and whistles, like I said, with the frame rate boost and the speeding up of walking, because it was a bit slow actually on the PS4. But I think because in that time I've played The Quarry and House of Ashes, it really does reference it, and I'm like, this is not... move into House of Ashes, not on the level of House of Ashes in my view. That's just you can tell it's their latest effort of this Dark Pictures anthology anyway, because to me it's a step above. But here we go then. House of Ashes, sort of the main event. How did you find this one? Completely different setup and set of characters, and quite a unique setting. We're in Iraq, war. What's your thoughts then, high level, of House of Ashes?
Yeah, it pretty much fixes all of my complaints with Little Hope. And to be honest, probably story-wise, certainly character-wise, maybe the most interesting set of characters they've got in any of these games, in that, for once, I mean, we said it as I was playing, you're not just a bumbling bunch of teens.
No, you're soldiers. You're trained soldiers.
Yeah. So you feel like, you got a bit of fight back in you at least. Yeah. So, your choices maybe based on that, and it gives you a bit more like interactivity, a bit more gameplay, gunplay, which is good. The characters themselves have a lot more like interpersonal relationships. There's like disputes going on and whatnot before the game starts then give you rise to much better decisions to make, much more fun mechanic, having these, you've got, I mean, it's not a spoiler. So you play as two sides of the conflict between the characters. So you've got the Americans and the Iraqis are in your group. So there's obviously that conflict there. And then you've got other conflicts within the group as well, which...
Mate, there's affairs going on. There's all sorts soap opera sort of stuff. It really...
Exactly.
You're right. It does that, having that dynamic in the group just feel... I don't know if I can... Certainly in Man of Medan and Little Hope, you don't really have that. The Quarry, you kind of have it. There's like a little relationship with, I think it's Jason and the girl, and like they're breaking up. But it's not. This just feels. I think again, it goes back to the point you made earlier. Because these are trained soldiers, they're adults. Like they are, they're not these bumbling counsellors who are just there to get pissed up. They're serious. They're there to find weapons of mass destruction. That's kind of why they go into this farm area to kind of see and say that there was an underground facility there, end up falling in. It turns out there's this tomb there. It's been sitting there for God knows how long. And again, kind of another change is that the antagonist and the threat in this one is just straightforward. There's no trickery. There's no kind of nonsense. There's no gotcha halfway through. It's like, no, there's monsters down there, for lack of a better term, and you've got to just survive against these fucking horrible creatures and make it through the night and try and get out of the bloody tomb.
Yeah, I think that's another real strong point, is that like the setup is like, obviously Until Dawn, Quarry, classic horror setup. Nothing wrong with it, but been done a million times.
Yep.
I mean, this one's not going to, you're not going to have Daniel Day-Lewis in there. But as soon as I saw it in my head, I was like, I've seen way worse film setups than this. As you said, in Iraq, they're looking for weapons of mass destruction. They find what they think is a big silo, but it's something completely different. And you're like, away you go. That's a pretty decent setup for a horror movie or game. Yeah. So definitely better in that respect. It plays better because you've got that full camera angle, like 360 camera, none of the jump scare bits, which is good. Quick time events are definitely more forgiving, although I still blundered, I would say, about 60 or 70% of them. I don't know why I struggle so much on them, man. Oh, I hate them. But all the other bits, like the gunplay, it's to be honest, it's got all the same bits you'd expect from, if you've played any supermassive game, you're essentially shooting targets, you're hiding and having to like follow a beat to keep your breath quiet, or I don't know what you're meant to be doing in those bits, to be honest. Like, breathe, I don't know. Quick time events are all over it, and just choices, I guess. But the choices here seem, there are a couple that confused me, but that's maybe because I'm just a bit special in that I thought I was going to be, the choice would lead to one sort of, in my brain, I was like, right, if I choose this, he's going to be friendly to this guy. And it didn't work that way, and that sort of annoyed me a bit. But
tucked him up.
I think I'd have to go back on another playthrough to see if that was me being special or not.
It's hard though, because you only get a certain amount of time to decide as well. So you do. I half read it and think, and sometimes you just make a gut decision because you think, I'll run out of time. I don't know what it chooses. I guess it just randomly chooses one, or maybe it just is a standard stock choice it'll make. But yeah, I noticed. I didn't have that problem myself, but I noticed a couple of times when you was like, "Oh no, that's not how I wanted it to pan out," which can be an issue with narrative games where you have choices or dialogue choices in particular. You can't really tell the tone of them. I feel like normally they do a really good job of communicating it, but could be your specialness, or could just be that there's a few in there that are a little bit ambiguous. Let the audience decide. Send us an email.
Yeah, and you know what? They definitely give you some hard choices. But obviously, as the game goes on and on, they want you to have to, pick the best of a bad situation. The other thing I think was quite good, which we didn't touch on with Little Hope, is like Little Hope, the chapters are very short, and you keep getting those intermissions with that guy who like pieces it all together.
Fucking curator keeps coming up.
Yeah,
waffling shit for like 5 minutes at a time. You're like, come on, mate.
Yeah. Exactly. So they've really cut down on that. You might see him once at the beginning, once at the end, maybe twice in the game.
Yeah, I think you see him like at the beginning to set it up, once, sort of shortly afterwards, once again, and then he's like, right, I'll see you at the end. You're like, all right,
Yeah.
that's pretty. Whereas in Little Hope, he was like, he felt like he was there like 4 or 5
Yeah.
times, going, oh, what are you doing? It's like, yeah, I know,
Yeah,
it's hard,
badgering
mate.
you.
Pressure. You're sitting there with your little books, doing God knows what. You're tied into this nonsense somehow.
Yeah, so I'd be curious to know how the games were made, as in, like, were they making Medan and Little Hope at the same time? Because this feels like there's been some time. They've taken some time. They've listened to what I imagine to be some negative feedback, and they really seem to have fixed almost everything.
Yeah,
if I'm
I
honest.
mean, they're a year apart, all these games, so they're sort of. So if you go to 2019, would have been Man of Medan, 2020, Little Hope, 2021, House of Ashes, and then this in 2022, The Devil in Me. So I guess that maybe it could just be as simple as we can only pick and choose. Cause in my experience, you can feel them gradually get better.
Yeah.
Like from Man of Medan, just playability, all the tight spaces, all the fixed cameras that are just a nonsense. And then Little Hope, halfway house is the camera, sort of mostly gives you full sort of third person controls, but not quite. And then House of Ashes has full control all the time. There's not a time when you will not have that. So maybe it was just a case of in that particular instance, I guess from camera and controls, they managed to just get that in and commit to it being free format camera all the time, rather than just mostly. I got these sort of vibes I was getting off this. First of all, like The Descent. I don't know if you've seen The Descent. Like,
I love it, yeah.
bit of a. I don't know if many Americans will know of that because it was sort of like a cult British type film, but it's because you're stuck in like a tomb underground and it's claustrophobic. I think they're climbers in The Descent, aren't they, or something like that?
Yeah.
They're soldiers in this, so there is a difference there. But just the setting, like that level of setting of like stuck underground, creatures sort of roaring round trying to get out, gave me like The Descent vibes. There's a little bit of Predator in there as well. I'm almost certain someone's been cheeky with a couple of the references and just, you know, some of like they do like a little first person shot of the creature sort of tracking you down. You're like, this feels a little bit Predator-y. And then it throws in little alien vibes and things like that. It has a nice little trifecta of like horror genres or horror type films it touches upon. And then if you want to be nice, some people say, oh, Indiana Jones is in a tomb. And I was like, well, not for this lot. This is a bit more Temple of Doom than it is whatever the first one's called.
And what I like about it is it really kind of blends those like movies down. Like it will start with The Descent, by the end you're in full blown like Prometheus alien vibes, and it's like, this is cool. Like it just builds and builds and builds, and you're like, okay, you can tell when you're getting towards the end game here, and it's fun.
Yeah. Anything you didn't like?
What didn't I like about?
I will say we will heap a lot of praise on this, but these are the same Supermassive games DNA. So if this won't, I don't think this will change anyone's mind if they played the others and didn't like them generally. Like there's nothing here for people like that. But I feel like if you've played those and had an enjoyment, this is a good one to dive into.
Do you know, I was literally going to say exactly those words, is that I've got no problem with it, but I've grown to quite like these games in all their warts and all. But yeah, if you didn't like it, there's nothing here to change your mind. If you do, this is arguably the best one since Until Dawn. These have grown on me. So I would actually say this is probably my favourite of all of them. Because hell of a lot cheaper than The Quarry. I think I got it on sale, $12.99.
Well,
again, free.
25 quid RRP. Quarry, 65 quid. I mean, it's
massive difference.
Yeah.
Also, Quarry, a little bit overly long. I think I must have said that in the review. It doesn't need to be, I can't remember what it was, 14, 15 hours. Like, this on a single run would maybe be 6 or 7 max.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no more than that, certainly.
I like that length for these sort of games, so perfect. And yeah, you're getting like a much better story, much better cast of characters, setting. Like everything here is better than has been in at least the last games in the anthology series. It makes me pretty hyped for the next one, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to the new one that's coming. It'll be the finale of season 1, as they're calling it, which to me seems like they'll take us pause. Bandai Namco are publishing it, like send them a bit of money, and they'll be like, let's have a look at the business and see how this is done. And if it never, continues, like, well, we gave you a full season. I think it's supposed to be 8 games. The agreement they signed all those years ago. It's pretty crazy because they were Until Dawn was a PlayStation exclusive. It felt like Sony were curating this relationship, eventually going to buy them, bring them in house properly, and then these would be like another little line. But they obviously didn't think Until Dawn was as good as we did, and sort of let them go off and do their own thing. One thing I wanted to ask you is, because we play this as a shared story, like I mentioned earlier, and you do get scenarios where I'll be playing a scene, you'll be playing a scene at the same time. We're in separate, different areas of the location that we're in, and in a single player run you'd play both of those but back to back, so that's where it will be a bit of a longer solo run. Did you ever feel like you missed any story elements on either Little Hope or House of Ashes, because we played them the same way? And how does that compare, because we did it online, with movie like mode, what you did with the Quarry, where you pass the pad and you kind of, even if you're not playing at that point, you can still see what's going on story wise and what other people are doing?
To be honest, I quite enjoy play. I think these are fun games to play with people. It's the only way I've ever played any of them in those two guises. So not really. I would say, again, they even almost fixed this between the two games we played recently. In the Little Hope, absolutely, I probably missed, as you said, almost, maybe even almost half the game there. Certainly in House of Ashes, if you remember, there's quite a few scenes where I would be doing what I'm doing, you're doing what you're doing, and then I would see what you would then watch each other's actions.
Yeah.
And it didn't do it, maybe, I don't know, maybe done that a third of the time when we were doing different things, but it kind of filled you in a lot more on the story. So I understood why what was happening now, kind of thing, which was quite cool. Again, another thing they kind of, I don't know if it needed fixing, but I appreciated the effort they went to there.
Yeah, no, good. Just interested to see how those sort of two modes compared, and I think they do a good job of, obviously they design shared story online, so they must think about, right, player A is going to take 5 minutes here, player B 10. It must be difficult to plan that and implement it, so that, because I was surprised at just how seamless it was, because at times I was like, I know what I'm doing, I'll get through this in a minute. Adcock could be fucking looking at some vase that he's found on the floor, turning it round, going, oh, what's this? But what it does quite conveniently is, rather than me ending, if there's nothing for me to see, I thought my character would just stand there, dead still, and then it'd just wait a minute until you'd finish what you were doing. But what it does is it kind of puts your character in a holding scenario. So there's one at the very beginning where there's almost a mini skirmish breaking out on above ground between competing soldiers. And so my character was running, sort of looking over the little sandbags, going back. It was changing angles. It was almost as though it was continuing the continuity of the scene whilst you were fiddling around doing whatever you were doing. And I appreciate that, rather than it just sort of just either going to a blank screen and waiting, or just awkwardly standing there. It kind of at least made an attempt to make it have some level of sense from my perspective.
Nice.
Well, let's move into where, if we do want to put House of Ashes into the Dimp Digital Gaming Gallery, final thoughts, and if you want to place it somewhere, where would it go?
So final thoughts is this: if you like these narrative-based games, this is a good example of it. And if you grab it at the moment, you're going to get it for a really good price. And I think either way you play it is a lot of fun. So absolutely going in the gallery. And it's going to go higher than Little Hope, I guess. So if Little Hope's a bronze, this is all day long a silver.
Nice. Same for me. Silver for House of Ashes. Having spent a lot more time with the anthology than you have. I've played each of them now at least 4 times on the various versions. This is head and shoulders really above the others. It's not perfect. It's a little bit awkward sometimes because there's tight corridor, or I guess tight. It's a tight cave at the end of the day. You sort of feel like getting caught up on the geometry or whatever, and you can't see where you're going, etc., etc. But other than sort of minor grievances, the actual meat of this, which is the story, characters, setup, scenario are all really, really good. Like, it really does have some more layers that the others just simply don't have. Sort of tackling a bit more of a mature setting with mature characters in the sense that they are, they're soldiers, and meaning that the threat also is higher for me. Like, these are trained killers at the end of the day, and they're struggling to stay alive against whatever's down there. So, like, stupid teenagers sort of running and tripping over, I'm like, yeah, well, look, how much of a threat are these, whatever these fucking Wendigos or whatever it was in one of the old ones? Like, how much of a threat are these? Whereas these, whatever these things are definitely causing problems with a platoon of soldiers down there. And so yeah, an easy silver, House of Ashes. Probably my favourite, like you, out of the Supermassive kind of games from Until Dawn onwards. Ignoring that VR Rush of Blood to the Head, that light gun game. Well, actually, it's not a light gun game; it's a VR game. But you sat on a roller coaster shooting things.
Never knew it existed.
PlayStation
Jesus.
VR, mate. I thought you'd have definitely
Missed
been
that
on
one.
that. Nah, I don't think it got the best reception, to be honest. Do you know what I was thinking? After this, House of Ashes, given that you have like this soldier setting, I think it'd be really interesting if Supermassive did like a war game where it's not a horror game. There's a mission that we're going to go on, and perhaps a few missions and whatnot, and you're sort of in charge of the squad, or you control characters, and you've got to make decisions of a tactical war element. Like, perhaps it's all movies you could pull things from, like Saving Private Ryan, all these little situations like, we've got a prisoner of war here, do we kill him or do we sort of leave him? Potentially he might come back and haunt us. Like, having that dynamic, like, completely remove the horror aspect. I mean, it will be horrific, no doubt, in terms of just setting, but I'd really like to see them do something like that one day. Like, take a different kind of approach to it. And just seeing some of the glimpses of this, I was like, like a full game based on like a war-based scenario with soldiers dying. Like, can you keep them all alive, etc.
Another good setting would be like a disaster movie. Just people to save, decisions to make, routes to go. Like, could be really, it'd work in loads of different genres, really. And to be honest, 8 games, I mean, Christ, if they can do that, they would have covered every horror genre.
It's true.
Almost twice over. So there's got to be an end to this. But hopefully the guts of the game, like you said, the core gameplay could definitely be, just overhauled onto another skin, and it would be really good.
Indeed. Right, let's close it down. We got a nice little Man of Medan on a bronze, Little Hope ×2 on a bronze, and House of Ashes ×2 on a silver. So that's a little Supermassive update. I'll be looking forward to The Devil in Me, which will be coming very shortly from Supermassive, and we'll round out the little bit of Chester there for the video watchers there. Young little rogue getting up there.
Could probably do a Stray review.
Get him involved, but yeah, we'll see you on the next episode. And thanks for making it this far. Subscribe to the free feed if you want to download the episode either on your favourite podcast app or on YouTube. But nothing more for us to say here other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.